ages of power.
History often moves like a glacier, slow, crushing, inevitable. It grinds mountains down to dust over centuries, so quietly that those living in its shadow forget it is moving at all. But sometimes, history strikes like lightning. In the late 18th century, the world was holding its breath. From the frozen, gilded palaces of St. Petersburg to the misty, industrializing shores of Britain, Europe felt timeless. It felt unchangeable. Kings sat upon thrones carved from 1,000 years of tradition, believing their power was ordained by God himself. They wore crowns of heavy gold, never realizing they stood on foundations of sand. They did not know it yet, but their time was ending. The clock had already struck midnight for the old regime. Far away, on a rugged sun-baked island in the Mediterranean Corsica, a child had been born into obscurity. A boy with a burning ambition that would one day consume them all. But this story is not about him, not yet. This is the story of the world he was destined to shatter. This is the story of a civilization walking blindly, arrogantly toward the edge of a cliff. To look at a map of Europe in the 1780s was to see a continent locked in amber. It was a world of absolute monarchs and fragile empires held together by bloodlines and bayonets. In Vienna, the Habsburgs struggled to hold together a patchwork of nations, Hungarians, Czechs, Austrians, binding them with marriage and suffocating bureaucracy. In Berlin, the Prussian military machine rested on the laurels of past glories, a state that was more army than country. And in London, a constitutional monarchy was nursing its wounds, humiliated after losing its crowning jewel, the American colonies, to a rebellion founded on dangerous new ideals. It was an age of staggering elegance, masking brutal inequality. At Versailles, the court of France, aristocrats danced in halls of mirrors, silk rustled, wine flowed, and their laughter drowned out the rumble of thunder in the distance. They believed that because the sun had risen on their privilege yesterday and the day before, it would surely rise on it tomorrow. But the ground beneath them was shifting. The old feudal order, the system where a man's worth was determined the moment he drew his first breath, was rotting from the inside. The structure was too heavy, the cost too high, and the people too hungry. The weapon that would kill the old regime was not a musket, it was not a cannon, it was a pen. Across the coffee houses of Paris and the salons of Europe, a dangerous new wind was blowing. They called it the Enlightenment. Men like Voltaire, Rousseau, and Montesquieu were asking questions that no king could answer, and questions that kings feared. Why should one man rule over millions by divine right? What is the value of a crown if the people starve? Is man born free, yet everywhere in chains? These ideas were viruses. They infected the minds of lawyers, merchants, and even soldiers. They whispered of liberty. They dreamt of equality. They demanded fraternity. The absolute monarchs tried to suppress these thoughts. They burned books and exiled writers. But you cannot kill an idea with a dungeon. The ink was already dry. The social contract between the ruler and the ruled was broken. And the people were beginning to realize that the power of the king existed only because they agreed to believe in it. Nowhere was the fracture deeper, nowhere was the rot more advanced than in France. France was the superpower of the age, the cultural heart of Europe. If Europe had a soul, it resided in Paris, but its heart was failing. The nation was bankrupt, bled dry by foreign wars, including the American Revolution and the grotesque extravagance of the court. While King Louis XVIII, a man ill-suited for the weight of history, hunted in his private forests, the price of bread in Paris skyrocketed. A single loaf cost a month's wages. Mothers watched their children waste away while the granaries of the rich remained locked and guarded. Hunger does not debate philosophy, hunger acts. The tension snapped not in the palaces, but in the streets. The king, desperate for money, summoned the estate's general, opening a door he could never close again. He expected a financial bailout. Instead, he invited a revolution. The Third Estate, the common people, the workers, the forgotten 98% of the population, stood up. They looked at the nobility, they looked at the clergy, and they declared, "We are the nation." Summer 1789. The heat in Paris was oppressive, boiling the blood and shortening tempers. The city was a powder keg, and the king lit the match. He surrounded Paris with foreign troops, intended to intimidate the people. Instead, he terrified them. And terror turned instantly to rage. On the morning of July 14, 1789, the pressure cooker exploded. A mob of nearly 1,000 Parisians, shopkeepers, and artisans seized 30,000 muskets from the military hospital at Les Invalides. But they had a problem. They had guns, but no gunpowder. They knew where to find it. They turned their eyes toward the east of Paris, toward the symbol of royal tyranny, the Bastille. It was an old, crumbling fortress used as a prison for those held by the king's arbitrary will. To the history books, it was a strategic point, but to the mob, it was a monster. They didn't just want the powder, they wanted to tear the symbol down. The fighting was chaotic and bloody. For hours, the people threw themselves against stone walls and cannon fire. But when the French guards sided with the people and brought up cannons to blast the gates, the governor of the Bastille surrendered. It was a fatal mistake. The drawbridge lowered, and the old regime rushed in to meet its doom. The governor was dragged into the streets, beaten and beheaded. His head was placed on a pike and paraded through the city, a grisly standard of a new era. When the stones of the Bastille fell, the spell of monarchy was broken. The divine right of kings died that afternoon in the gutters of Paris, washed away by the blood of the governor and the cheers of the crowd. The king was awakened at Versailles to hear the news. "Is it a revolt?" he asked. "No, sire," the duke replied. "It is a revolution." The revolution began with hope. It began with the declaration of the rights of man. But chaos is a ladder, and the descent into madness was swift. France is now a cauldron of paranoia. The guillotine's blade rises and falls like a mechanical heartbeat, silencing priests, nobles, and revolutionaries alike. The king is dead, the queen is dead, the republic is eating its own children. Europe looks on in horror, gathering its armies to crush this dangerous experiment before it spreads. France is alone, bankrupt, starving, besieged on all sides by the armies of tyrants and torn apart from within by faction and fear. There is no order. There is no safety. There is only the mob, the terror, and the vacuum of power. The world waits. It waits for a savior or a monster. It waits for someone with the will to tame the chaos and the genius to weaponize the revolution. In the smoke of the battlefield, a shadow is rising, a lieutenant of artillery with a strange accent and eyes that see what others cannot. Who is he? And will he save France? Or will he burn it to the ground? We look back at these events as if they were a play. We see the wigs, the muskets, and the scrolls, and we think of them as relics of a dead world. We tell ourselves that we have evolved, that our systems are unshakable, that the age of absolute power is over. But human nature does not change. They say history does not repeat itself, but it surely rhymes. The costumes change. Crowns are traded for suits and decrees are traded for algorithms, but the blindness of power remains the same. Look around the world today. Can you not hear the echo? In lands rich with black gold, people stand in lines for bread while their leaders preach prosperity from behind high walls. In the East, old empires try to resurrect themselves with iron and fear, silencing the voices of the youth to protect the dogmas of the old. Even in the great republics of the West, the halls of democracy fracture. Brother turns against brother, and the trust between the ruler and the ruled wears thin, stretched to the breaking point by inequality and hubris. The mistake of the kings was thinking that the silence of the people was consent. It was not. It was patience, and patience runs out. Whether it is 1789 or today, the ingredients of the powder keg are always the same, only the spark is different. It sits there, waiting, in the overlooked grievance, in the hungry stomach, in the silenced question. The storm that broke the Bastille did not end in the 18th century. It just went dormant. The world is always one bad day away from the fire. The Bastille has fallen, the cage is open, but now the monsters are loose.